All right, you can begin.
Okay, we'll call to order the Law Committee meeting, Law and Public Safety Committee meeting for July 14th, 2020. Those members present are Paul Schmidt,
Mike Wilson,
Casey Lippert,
Rob Tankersley,
Jim Lucas.
Scott McKeon.
I believe
Kirk
that's our.
Mousa.
Oh, thank you, Kurt. Good.
John Creech.
Noah Powers.
Kirk, is that a real background or is that just a picture in back of you?
That's the place I stayed last year.
Okay, so that's not real. Okay. You were rubbing it in on us. So, okay.
I think Chief Vanover's on as well. I didn't hear him chime in, but I think he's here too.
Steve Vanover's here.
Okay. I guess we have everyone. Vicky may call in. We're not certain. Jim, you want to take the agenda in the order? Is there anything special you want to take ahead of time to get some people relieved from the meeting?
Noah has to go first, regardless, because there's a civil service meeting coming up soon. So he'll go first, then we'll chat with Steve and Kirk if there's any questions about the Code 51 emails and that type of thing. That's why, I didn't know if Vicky was going to be addressing that today or not. So why don't we start with Noah, get him out, and then see if there's any questions for Kirk and Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So what I have are two collective bargaining agreements. These are the collective bargaining agreements representing patrol officers and police sergeants. The gist of what we've got here is that these contracts have very few changes in them at the moment. As far as patrol goes, we made one minor change to a discipline article, which removed demotion because demotion is not truly a possibility in an entry-level position. And then we also made one minor change to allow us to do random nicotine screenings for purposes of managing our healthcare contributions from employees. But what these are more than anything is a kind of a freeze of negotiations. We did not reach an agreement on everything before we got into the middle of this pandemic. And so what our goal was to push some of the issues that we're not able to come to an agreement on off until later this year, when hopefully this pandemic is a little more under control. The patrol and the sergeants are a little less taxed in the work that they're doing, and we can actually get out some better time to talk and have a better understanding of where we are in the world when we're doing that. So as far as the patrol unit goes, we have a number of reopener clauses that are kind of unusual. Typically, you only see that with wages, but we have that for dues deduction, work period and overtime, compensatory time, wages and compensations for years 2 and 3. So the 2% that council approved for this year is incorporated into this agreement. And then a minimum standards for promotion is the final clause. As far as the sergeants go, it is generally speaking the same: dues deductions, work period and overtime, compensatory time, wages and compensation. But the minimum standards for promotion article was agreed to in the last contract with the sergeants, and we're not looking for any changes on that. So that is the gist of what I've got on those two pieces of legislation. Be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Casey's trying to rejoin, so maybe until he can rejoin, I don't know if we'll have any questions on this or not, Paul. But he just texted me that he's trying to rejoin.
he looks like he's back in. I see him
Okay.
up there.
Got it.
Casey, do you have any question, or did you hear the presentation? You may not be there. I don't see him on my screen.
He's
I
on
see
the
him
screen. He's
online.
muted. Casey, you're
Oh.
muted.
I can see it.
Was there a question? I'm sorry.
Do you have any questions on Noah's presentations?
No, I dropped off. My internet connection failed for a minute, so I heard the basics of it. I don't have any questions, and I think it sounds good.
Mike, are you okay with it?
Yes, sir.
So am I. Okay, go to the next item then, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you
All right,
all.
why don't we jump to Scott's items, because he may have to, before we do Kirk and Steve, because he may have to help out at open tax. So Scott has an appropriation and the tax budget.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, I also wanted to mention to Mark, I'm belated in asking for the audit legal letter, so I'll be sending that to you tomorrow, Mark.
Okay.
Yes, we have the annual tax budget. It's about a month later than normal. We were approved for an extension since our meeting is not till July 21st. It's relatively vanilla, which is a good thing. The budget, although it's lagging to the prior year due to everything going on in the world, we are lagging from the prior year, but we're kind of holding our own against the budget. So it's a good time to have a conservative budget number. So it's fairly vanilla and fairly straightforward. We will have a public hearing before the council meeting on that. Any questions? All right.
I'm fine.
All right.
When will the public meeting be, Scott? Is it this coming council
Yes,
meeting?
yeah, it precedes the council meeting. Yes.
Right. Now, this would also be a public council meeting for the first time. If
Right.
everything goes through, it won't be Zoomed.
Right.
Casey, are you
We're-
okay with
we're-
everything? Sorry.
Thank you.
We're looking at potentially having a Zoom option for people who aren't able to join in, or residents who, would prefer to do it from home. We're just looking at that option.
That's a good idea. Thank you, Jim.
And just to touch base, Noah and I did kind of some quick measurements of council chambers, and there's seating for about 5 people up at the regular area up top, and probably room for 2 elected officials to kind of flank down each side. So that's kind of a total of 9 around a horseshoe. And then there's 11 pairs of seats in the room that if everybody would buddy up, you would have a total of 22. So the room gets kind of crowded fairly fast, just to give everybody a little bit of a heads up. But that's what that looks like.
Vicky is hoping that people join in, obviously, in council chambers, but we're also looking at the Zoom options.
Are we to be masked at the meeting, I take it?
Yeah, that was in Vicky's email as well, that
Okay.
to wear masks, that type of thing. Yes.
I'll move on to the appropriation request. This is for, I believe it's $120,000. This is for refunds to be paid out of the 605 fund. We are paying these. They don't get paid out until within 30 days of the event. This is the budget for what we would expect to happen as long as we continue the current status of the events we are and aren't able to hold. This is the budget of refunds for the rest of the year. Any questions on that?
I just looked it up. It's 120,000.
Yeah.
From the 605 fund.
Okay, thank you.
No questions.
Casey, you're all right?
I'm good. Thank you.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
So am I. All right.
So why don't we jump to Kirk and Steve? Vicky sent out an email about Code 51. I'm not sure if anybody saw the response. I do have the health department meeting with the ownership. I think that's going to happen this week. So I didn't know if there was any questions about what was transpiring there based on Vicky's email. But I thought Steve and Kirk being here would be a good place to talk about it, since Vicky mentioned it and you guys are the safety committee. So
My understanding of Vicky's concern from the email, and I didn't have time to dig into it too much today, but basically that it's overcrowded, maybe from a fire department standpoint, maybe from a COVID-19 standpoint, and that the parking situation is such that Code 51 attendees are parking properly.
Correct. And the parking situation, Steve reached out to the person who was expressing the concerns, and that person understands that the police department can't tow off of private property. So they have or will be installing signage to tow themselves, but they don't want to get to that point, obviously, because they're also a fellow business, and they just are looking for some kind of compromise, that type of thing. So whether they find that, who knows?
Well, the one thing I'll
Hamilton
just
County
make,
Public Health.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Paul.
I was just going to say,
Hamilton County Public Health.
go ahead, Jim. That's okay.
Hamilton County Public Health, though, will be talking to the facility about the crowding and the mask issue.
Just, I wondered if the pictures were current from that evening or if they're elsewhere. There are two points to
They
make.
weren't.
Please.
They weren't, Paul. The link that Vicky sent was from last year. I don't know if she knew that or not. I reached out to her to tell her that. She forwarded me some other links where I did find two photos showing some, and that was a photo that I included to the health department that I think you guys all received, those two photos. But the initial link was an old link from last year this time.
The other point I was going to make, Hometown. Yeah, Hometown has
Paul, you got to kill one of your backgrounds.
Okay, well, let's see if I can. Well, I'll make it very quick. Hometown has their residents put notices inside their car. They did a couple months ago. I don't know if they still do that or not. Thank you.
Kirk, are there any concerns from the fire department's perspective based on overcrowding, or is it strictly a public health perspective kind of thing?
Well, this is an ongoing issue and has been for quite some time, and it's never good to be overcrowded. Our bigger concern from our end is that the times that we've been forced to go in and do an emptying of the building because of overcrowding issues to do a recount, generally it's around the 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning when they're getting ready to close anyway, and they're all inebriated, they're all under the influence, and it gets violent. I've had people try and pull my members out of the front of the medic unit. We had one guy get hit by a car when we forced the evacuation like that. So no, it's never good to have an overcrowding issue, but it's also bad we don't gain anything usually by forcing them to evacuate the structure for a recount, except for more ugliness. So it'd be better to mitigate this on the front end than it is to try and do this at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're having one of these large events.
Well, I don't think it's fair to the local hotel businesses across the street next door that have to deal with this whenever they have those big promotions going on and everything else. And I understand, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw on the blotter from this past weekend that they had a shooting or a shots fired call over there, and they had an apprehension.
They did, but it wasn't for the shots fired, Rob. Two of our guys were sitting down the street, and they heard what they thought were gunshots. They went up there to investigate, saw a car leaving the area quickly. They stopped that car, did not recover a gun, arrested a couple people on some warrants.
Okay.
And then we did find some shell casings in the parking lot later that evening or morning or whatever you want to call it. But no victims, no calls that I'm aware of, other than had two officers in the area and they heard what they thought were gunshots, which probably were. So.
Okay.
Can I just ask, what is the fine for being overcrowded or over the number that you are allowed to have?
To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how much the actual fine is. I know for the most part, it's just an inconvenience. I mean, when we did this with the bar up there across from the Drury Inn, I can't remember the name right now, again and again and again and again, they never did get nailed because they were overcrowded, even though they were tremendously overcrowded. It was other issues that brought them down. And I think that's kind of where we're heading with Code 51. At some point, it's the overcrowding doesn't have any real teeth. It's the ancillary things that are going to bring them down.
What ancillary things are you talking about?
The gunshots,
I got you.
the rabble rousing and unruly behavior. When the neighboring businesses really do tow all the cars that are parking there, the tow truck drivers have a really great day, and the word's going to get around that you can't park in the parking lot there anymore.
Back to the question though about the overcrowding. If there's no fine for that, then the only there's no enforcement. So the only thing that we have going for us is if they want to decide to comply with the rules on their own. Is that right?
I think at some point you can cite them to court. And again, this is probably closer to Steve's bailiwick. I have never been involved in a monetary fine for an overcrowding issue. I mean, technically we can shut the building down, but then we have to go in with either by surprise or by complaint. And when we do that, it's usually later in the evening, and the evening's for all intents and purposes done.
Yeah, I would be more interested in, could we shut them down for a period of time if they violate that crowding issue? If there's, to me, it's very simple. We can't police it. We can't enforce it. It's a huge problem. To me, the answer is to fine them for that, or close them down for a number of days for that. The towing issue, of course, takes care of itself. That is in and of itself a fine in a way for parking illegally. But that the whole thing about you can't go over this number is then just a suggestion, unless if we are truly going to be serious about going, we're going to close you down. That's a fine. That's a penalty. And it would probably be a lot easier than going in and dragging everybody out at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I'm supportive of what Mike is saying. Let me take a different tack. And I know the Code 51 property has kind of come bubble, then it goes quiet for a little bit, and then it pipes back up. Is there anything to be said for opposing their liquor license renewal next time it's up? And if anybody knows when the next time it's up?
I'll try to answer that as best as I can. I think the liquor licenses come up for renewal every spring, basically. So I'm thinking April of next year, somewhere around there. We've successfully closed down 2, if not 3 bars over the years for, had their liquor licenses pulled, and the Garage and Club Tiki are the 2 that come to mind immediately. The cases we had against both of those were significantly more than what we've got against Code 51 at this point. We've been maintaining a book. We've been a binder of all of our calls and all of the problems we've had with Code 51. We've tried to work with them. I know I've personally met with them in the last 2 years 4 times to deal with these issues. The parking complaints are nothing new, whether it's Chester Towers or the hotel across the street that brings up the parking issues, the garbage in the parking lots, the theft in the parking lots, the fights. I know it's a problem, but I don't think we're anywhere near being able to declare them a nuisance business or to oppose their liquor license. We brought in liquor control. They've been in and done surprise inspections and those type of things and checked on that. If I'm not mistaken, they were cited 6 months ago or something for some after-hours sales, if you will, because liquor was still out on, tabletops and counters at, past past 2:30, but nothing significant at this point. So
It sounds,
go ahead.
I was gonna say the standard for pulling a liquor license is the same as for opposing a renewal, as far as like it has to be a nuisance under Ohio Revised Code. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Mark might weigh in on this more than I can, but my experience and what my knowledge says is that a liquor license is even more difficult than declaring just a normal business a nuisance with a civil nuisance order. The liquor control or the liquor board doesn't like to pull or not renew liquor licenses. But
Yeah, I agree with that. And the nuisance action is actually done by the civil division of the prosecutor's office, and it's done maybe once a year, and it's got to be just outrageous. It's places that have had a number of shootings. A lot of arrests basically are required before you can do a civil nuisance. And my understanding too is pulling the liquor license is almost impossible. But so Mike, I know your comment about you'd like to shut them down for a couple of days. There's really not provisions to do that without doing a civil nuisance action, in my knowledge. And that's it takes a lot of crime statistics and arrest statistics in order to do it. So it's easier said than done. I'd like to do it too, but it's just not that easy.
I got you. Well, I would just like for them to comply with whatever the laws are. And if they won't, then I would like there to be some kind of a significant consequence, or else they never will.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's arresting the patrons is usually what is the background information you need. If there's a number of arrests for different people for serious crimes, and it's all coming out of that business, then that's basically the definition of a nuisance. You can say that this business is a nuisance, and that's the evidence. But without that, and like Steve said, apparently they're not nearly as bad as some of the prior ones that we were able to shut down.
But those
Steve?
are shut down now. Is
Yes.
there anyone that is currently in operation that has as many complaints as Code 51?
Yeah, there's plenty of not bars or restaurants or whatever, but I can probably give you 6 hotels right now where we have more calls for service and more problems than we do out of Code 51.
Steve, that was a comment I would make from with a number of motel rooms. There are at least 3 or 4 motels. There are at least 2 that St. Vincent de Paul will not service because of the issues at the motels. And there are 3, probably 4 that are problems. And when a citizen was talking, I don't want to go into it because it's always very confidential who you assist, but there are at least 2 that are very problematic, and you know who they are. And
Sure.
The second question of that is, I wanted to tell one of the citizens the motels were a bigger concern to me than Code 51. I mean, that's a personal impression on what I see going on in a general way speaking. The second, at one time when we talked about this, Steve, we thought about asking if they have like their own in-house security to a degree, if one calls it that. And do they have any effort of that to kind of patrol their own grounds? I know Sharonville wouldn't touch it. Our police don't want to have anything to do with if I remember correctly, but do they have their own security, so to say?
The last time I met with them, Mr. Schmidt, I mean, they have their own security, and I suggested they had most of their security inside of the building and inside of the business. And we asked them to move some more of their security outside to try to control what happens on their parking lot and those type of things, and control the crowd outside that's waiting to get in. I'm assuming that's all still in place, but it's been months since I've met with them.
Yeah, that's true, Steve.
So I'm assuming they've still got the same number of security people, but the quality of that, that's up to them. One of their arguments has always been is that they can't control what their patrons do once they're outside of their business or off of their property. So what happens on the parking lot across the street, or what happens when somebody that was at the club for, a couple of hours and leaves, that's not their doing per se. So it's a tough situation sometimes to deal with from a law enforcement perspective.
Thank you, Steve.
But I will add, though, just so you guys know, I did a quick check before the meeting today. We've been dispatched to Code 51 since the first of the year, or we've been there for 12 different times. And five of those 12 are what I would really call more significant incidents, if you will. Fights, assaults, the shots fired from this past weekend. The rest of the 12 incidents since the first of the year have been alarm drops and those type of things. So really 5 incidents since the first of the year at Code 51 that I can quickly come up with anyway. Now that doesn't mean there's not something that happened on Crown Point where the people left Code 51, they were intoxicated or under the influence of something and caused a problem over at Thornton's, let's say, but
Or
Waffle House. Yeah, we know that's happened.
Well, the point I wanted to make to Mike was that my concern on seeing these is the calls and the responses that you have to make to some other area institutions, not bars and so forth, really are considerably larger even from your annual report. And so it is part of a total picture that we have to address, although we don't like it, but in general, there are other issues too. And by the way, how do we stand on getting our the hotel resource officer, Steve? Any luck on that Mr. Cook had and opted to leave? Our liaison officer between the hotels and the motels?
I know that's all been on hold because of the COVID-19. Jim,
Okay.
chime in if something, but yeah, the whole COVID thing kind of put that on hold, but I'm hoping we're able to fill that position again soon, because I think that would be beneficial in this situation we've got right now with Code 51 and the problems they're causing for the neighboring hotels with parking and stuff. I think that'd be right up the alley for a hotel liaison.
Thank you.
Sorry for the barking dog here, but one of the things that you guys make a great point in that we've got all these hotels that are causing more issues than COVID 51, but COVID 51 is what came to light this week. And so, those are my questions about it. I don't want to feel like that we have no influence on what they're doing or no control over that. In this law committee, formerly, we have discussed panhandlers on the corners, and we've talked about the laws that are in effect for that. It just seems like that this is a bigger deal to me than panhandlers on a ramp at the interstate. And again, I realize that that the hotels are causing more problems than COVID 51. For all I know, there's other bars that are causing more problems. But this is what came to light for us this week, and it didn't look good, and I don't want to feel helpless in this.
Chief Mousa, if I heard you correctly, you feel like it is detrimental to your firefighters' potential safety to go in, and that's why you're kind of deferring to Chief Vanover's department. Am I hearing you correctly?
No, what I would prefer is not, if you're going to do a count and shut them down, you don't do that at 1:30 or 2 in the morning. That doesn't accomplish anything. The night is over. If we're going to do it, you need to do it in a proactive fashion. You need to count during the early evenings, when they get started, like 10 or 11 o'clock, really go in there and then do it on the front end of this, not on the back end when all the issues are already there and waiting to blow up. And that's traditionally what's happened. And then again, from our perspective too, on the fire side, most of these issues when we go there are on these second Saturday parties. And that's what Chief Vanover and I have also discussed with them in personal meetings, is getting their promoters in line, because it's not just the business, it's the promotion that brings this many people in. They oversell tickets, they oversell, and then force all these people into that structure. Ultimately, it is on Code 51 staff to count appropriate and not just click the clicker every fourth person. So yeah, I want to be proactive, but I'm not laying it on Chief Vanover either. But they are the enforcement side of us.
No, I think it's a team effort, but I guess my clubbing days are long over. So Code 51 has a second Saturday promotion that an outside promoter sells tickets to, and it happens once a month. So we know when it's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it wise, or is it cost effective to post somebody counting people? I don't know if that's a waste of city resources. I don't know if this happens every second Saturday, but I think Mike's point is good in that, we should maybe be doing something. So.
Well, it would be nice.
And your point too about, you don't want to do it at 1:30. You want to do it as they're coming in and saying, hey, you can't have anybody else come in, that kind of thing.
It would be nice if we could have, I got a couple emails about the shooting, and I told the people we were going to discuss it at law committee and get more of it factual information. It would be nice, as in the case of the panhandlers, where we got out and said we were going to use the Ohio Revised Code to alert them, and they stand on the sidewalk now, if you notice. It's pretty convenient on how they've done it. We still have them, but it did get to the citizens. We are proactively looking at this. We are aware of it. And if to say something to the general effect that everybody is aware of it, we know that this is the problem time. I know the chief probably has extra patrols in that area at that time, I would suspect, or he could. I don't know what your position is on that, Steve, and I'm not happy with them there. But again, as I pointed out earlier, there are a lot of other areas that have, I even almost think, more serious problems that the chief and his officers have to address. So I kind of take it in a total picture, but the citizens aren't aware of any of these other things. They're only aware of what they see at Code 51. And they want to know, well, what are you doing about it? Because these are our businesses. Exactly as Vicky said, that was the emails that I got. Hey, we've got all this money stuck into Chester Road, and you're not protecting the investment of both the city and these businesses. And I'm not exactly sure how best to respond to that. But I would like to come back and say something positive, that we are aware of it. And I don't know what positive things we could say about that. Steve, would you have any thoughts on that?
Not sure about the positive thoughts. I mean, let me real quickly echo what Chief Miles has said. I mean, shutting down the bar, we've done it a couple of times over the years at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Nothing good comes from that.
No.
That's a danger to his people. That's a danger to my
Absolutely.
people. Nobody wants to be forced to leave and get in their cars. Whether they're overcrowded on the inside or not, I don't know. The majority of our problems happen in the parking lot. We probably don't even hear about the problems that occur inside of the bar. Their own security take care of that. They kick people out, whatever they do inside the bar. We never get called about that. So our problems for the majority of the time happen in that parking lot. And it's things like large lines waiting to get in that, because of their counting people, and they can't get everybody in. So, we've asked them to help out with queuing people and being more efficient there. We get the parking complaints, we get trash complaints, we get the, theft from a vehicle. A woman has her purse stolen out of her car that she left there so that she didn't have to carry it inside of the club that night. So we've got all of that going on. It's not unique. I mean, we've dealt with this before, whether it's Peg's Pub, the Garage, alcohol and a large crowd sometimes don't mix well together, and we do our best to take care of that. The parking complaints, as bad as it is, that probably falls back on the property owners around them, and whether it's posting signs, towing the vehicles, whatever they decide to do. And I'm more than happy to help with them, help them work through what they can and can't do. But there is no, go ahead.
I would suspect that towing the vehicles is going to be kind of a dangerous situation also. I mean, we noticed that you report the towings on your shift notes, but you know, I would think that if people see a tow truck moving around pulling cars away, that word would spread, and I could see some issues coming from that. So, no easy solution if the other businesses try to enforce that. We could have confrontations on parking lots other than the coves.
Hey, Chief, I don't know if you have the data right in front of you, but how many of those 5 significant incidents occurred on the second Saturday promotion?
They're all Saturday and Sundays, Casey.
So they're either Saturday late
Not second Saturdays though. It looks like when they're not doing their second Saturdays, they also have other promotions on Saturdays into Sunday morning. Saturday night seems to be their big night.
So it's one night a month though. It's not.
Well, no. Of the 5, they were all on a Saturday night into Sunday morning, but they weren't all second Saturdays of the month.
Gotcha.
The incident that we had back on May 24th, I believe, was when it was 6/21. So 2 weeks ago, that was a large Hispanic crowd there that night. So.
Suggestion I have is have the owners of the hotels get in touch with their private towing companies and tell them, hey, park a truck here towards the entrance. Maybe they'll get the point then. I know there was one towing company that was busy, I guess, Saturday night. I think I towed 5 cars. That may have been Fairfield Inn, right across the street. Guys are made some money.
Chief, what's the third shift? When do they come in and when do they?
Third shift starts at 10:45 at night, so that's about when the crowd's starting to show up at that club. I've got people monitoring Code 51's webpage and their Facebook page and all that stuff. And when we know that there's something special going on or what we anticipate they think is going to be a huge crowd, we've kept people over from second shift into thirds to provide more manpower. All of our guys know that on second Saturdays, they're going to be in that area. That's how this past Saturday night, they were in the area when they heard the shots fired. I mean, we do our best to keep an eye on it when there's nothing else going on. And we have, spent city dollars to pay overtime to provide extra people when we can and when we know there's going to be an issue. But even talking to the owners and stuff, they don't even know what kind of crowd is going to show up sometimes. They promote it, and I guess it just all depends on what else is going on in the club scene around the city as to who shows up at Code 51.
No, you answered the question I was going to ask next, which was, to what extent would it be cost prohibitive to keep second shift officers on for a couple extra hours going into that, that twilight time, 2 a.m. kind of thing. Maybe that's part of the answer as far as if we've already been doing that, maybe those 5 incidents aren't 10, 20 incidents, and that's why.
Could be, and I think the club probably was shut down for a little bit too in there. Sure. But the significant incidents started back up in May. So the first one that I call a significant incident was May 24th. So, over the last 2 months.
Paul, that may be your answer as far as talking to.
I think that would be a good one to say that the chief is aware of it. We accelerate our scrutiny of that area during the times when we anticipate there might be problems. And I think that would be the first positive step that we're doing. And we're already doing that. I think it's very, very telling what you said. We may have had 20 if we didn't do some of these things. Could have had a lot more. I think that is would be a kind of a reasonable response that we're aware of. We talked to the chief and the options, and we are already doing certain things with patrol. And We're monitoring the situations carefully to anticipate problems, and we will staff and address as we anticipate them to come. It's just that they do like to hear something that we heard, we responded, and we did something. And that kind of, if something happens down the road, we are aware of it and have it take positive action. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
Anything else we could be doing?
The first thing I would like to do is I would like for us to have someone evaluate if we have sufficient ordinance to be able to enforce what we need to there. If we do not, then we need to examine what ordinance we do need to make so that to give our officers something that that is enforceable. If we need more manpower, then I feel like that we need to take a look at that. Whatever it happens to be, I feel like that we need to do one of two things. Well, we need to evaluate and decide if there is something that we can do. And if we come to the conclusion that there's nothing that we can do that's going to improve the situation, then there's no sense in continuing to talk about it.
Mark, are you able to reach out to some other law directors in the area for their thoughts on this?
Yes, I can. I mean, there's a disorderly conduct happens outside of almost every bar, almost every night. And it's just a matter of, do we want our police department over that? I mean, if someone's drunk and disorderly, if someone's trespassing, I mean, there are laws you can do, but do we want, when you've got 20 or 30 people exiting this place at once, and I can understand Steve's concern of having a couple police officers there try to cite them and arrest them, it's going to cause, sometimes the best result is hope they get in their cars as quick as possible and get the hell out of town. And it's not my decision to make. I mean, there are laws you can cite patrons for, and if you do it enough, they may stop going to the business. But are you asking for a police shooting? Are you asking for an officer-involved shooting? I mean, it's a tough call. So, I mean, there are laws that they are breaking laws, and it's a matter of, do we want to put our police officers in almost I don't want to call it a riot situation, but it's a very difficult situation. You've got dozens of drunk, high, disorderly people. We want to have 3 or 4 officers try to confront them, and then you might have dozens more join in. So it's a tough call. Sometimes really the best solution is get them out of there as quick as you can. But I've been making notes myself. I will go through our code and see if there's anything that we could possibly tag the business with. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. In case you may think of something too. I mean, basically our code mirrors the Ohio Revised Code. And that's why normally the way you go after a business is citing all patrons that have been charged with crimes. And that's the definition of a business being a nuisance. And like said, we're not nearly to that point yet with them. But I will look into it.
Going back, it just, and I understand what you said, but I don't want to put anybody in harm's way. I don't want anybody. I don't want to turn it into a riot in the parking lot. So if that is what we've decided, then to me, then that's it. It's over. That's it. That's what we're going to do, and hope for the best. That's my point. My point is, if there's something we can do, let's do it. And if there's not, then let's stop talking about it.
Hey, Jim, did you ever say what Hamilton County Public Health is looking into doing?
Yeah, they're meeting with the ownership hopefully this week. I think it was this week, to talk about the social distancing, masks, the occupancy, that sort of thing.
Anything about our county public health that just follow in the news, they don't have any teeth. Is that fair to say? I mean, they're not going in there with the possibility of citations or anything like that, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding statewide is it's the hope that they comply.
Okay. Well, I like the chief holding people in second shift and a third, but other than that, I don't know.
I'll just throw it out there on a real busy night. You know, Mr. Pietmeyer said dozens. It's literally hundreds. And no matter how many people I hold over, Mr. Lippert, some nights, we can't handle it ourselves. We need Springdale, we need Evendale, we need Glendale. We've had Woodlawn there. You know, it's
Brings back
yeah,
memories.
but we do what we do what we can. We're doing what we can.
I appreciate that. I think that, if we're doing what we can, then that's the answer. We're doing all we can. And that's what we're gonna have is what you see.
We arrest the people that have to be arrested, that need to be arrested. But Mr. Pietmeyer's right. A lot of times we just hope that everybody gets in their car and leaves as safely as possible, because that crowd can turn on, 2 or 3 Sharonville police officers
Oh yeah.
in a heartbeat, and that's when things go really bad.
And especially the way people look at cops nowadays, it's not a good situation.
Yeah. I totally agree.
I mean, other than telling the hotel property owners that, they need to put up, registered guest parking only, vehicle, if you're not registered, be towed at your expense. Like I said, I saw there was one tow company and I'm going to say it was, I don't know which one, but I mean, this guy there was five tows that he did. So, and then, like you said, if people get word that, hey, they're towing cars over there at the Fairfield Inn, just cross your fingers that the tow truck driver doesn't have any confrontation with the owner of a car that he's getting ready to tow. But it's a tough situation. But like Steve said, they can't tow cars off of private property. It's the property owner's responsibility.
Do you have any further comments, or can we move on to the next topic and allow the chiefs to leave?
I'm good. Thank you.
Mike, are you okay if we?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hassan. Steve, thank you for being here. Appreciate your thoughts and all your efforts, because it's pretty thankless. Yeah, it's very, very tough. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item.
So the
Jim?
next item, moving on to some good news. Back in the end of May, Ready Cincinnati reached out to us about a company that was looking at Sharonville along with some other sites about potentially relocating, or actually not relocating, but because it's a new venture, but locating in Sharonville. It's goes by the name Project Maple because of confidentiality purposes, obviously. But if they're waiting on council to hopefully adopt a 4-year job incentive creation grant at 35%. And assuming council adopts that, the state is also giving them some incentives. All indications are that they'll be moving here as their next location. So it's a 4-year, 35%. They would be signing a 10-year lease. So obviously that they would be here for the long haul. And I think any new company in this COVID times is a good thing, obviously. So kudos to Ready Cincinnati and assuming council supports this. Their payroll, let me scroll down. Their payroll, they're going to have at the maximum, obviously there's going to be a ramp up period. They're going to have close to 130 employees and a $4.3 million or so payroll. So a nice chunk of change for the city. Any questions about this?
No,
None here.
I'm fine.
Great. The next item is John Creech's dealing with stormwater.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, everyone. So back in 2009, the city of Sharonville, along with a whole bunch of communities in Hamilton County, partnered with something called the Hamilton County Stormwater District to be a single entity to basically achieve compliance with the Clean Water Act, Ohio EPA, and the US EPA standards for stormwater pollution. And there are a whole lot of rules and regulations that everyone has to abide by. Back in 2009, we adopted all of those. So what this is an amendment. The EPA makes changes periodically, and there are 5 articles as part of that. And there was a link in the memo I sent you. It's a lot of information. But 3 of the articles have been amended. They changed some definitions, a lot of definitions, made some corrections. Basically, in a nutshell, what this is regulations that address stormwater runoff and pollution from construction sites. That's what it boils down to. So it won't impact us a lot because we don't have a lot of new land to be developed, but we do have periodically redevelopment. The biggest one I can think of recently was the rebuild of the UDF there at Kemper and Lebanon Road. So they had to comply with that. And we're already doing this already. It's done, a lot of the work is done by CT Consultants in their review of construction plans. So basically that's what it is, adopting those changes by the EPA. And it's my understanding, this is actually a federal law. We're required to adopt. All the communities that are part of that district have until the end of the year to adopt these changes.
Hey,
That's
John,
all.
are you asking that per your contingency noted? Then you also have 3 readings at one meeting noted. If it's done by the end of the year, can't we just do this by normal readings?
Yeah, I did check that emergency. I didn't realize at the time that we had that time, but yeah, I've emailed them and told them we're working on it, and they said that's fine. So we could do it as an emergency. You know, it's not a zoning resolution; it's just an ordinance adoption, or at 3 readings.
But we can also do it as just normal readings at
Yes.
3 council meetings and in 30 days.
Right, and that's what I informed them we were doing.
Okay, so we'll have to change this cover memo right there then.
Got it.
So. Any questions about this?
I don't have any questions. Thanks, John.
Sure.
Mike, are you okay?
yes, I'm good.
So am I. So next item.
Great. The next item deals with, if you remember, it was probably 3 years ago by now, the Ohio Rail Commission and ODOT approached us about doing a safety project at Sharon Road by the railroad crossing to incorporate some safety measures so cars don't get stuck if a train is coming. That project is moving forward. There's 6 property owners where they need right-of-way or easements from. 5 of the 6 have agreed. We believe, or they believe, that this last property owner will agree. Just needs more time to discuss the issues with them. But to comply with ODOT's schedule, we have to start the resolution of intent to appropriate ordinance or resolution. Eminent domain is, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically a 2-step process. The first step is legislation declaring the intent to appropriate. And then the property owner is given notice of that. And then at the next meeting, council pass emergency legislation to appropriate if a deal is not done. So there's typically an emergency legislation to say that's your intent, followed by an emergency legislation saying that that's what you want to do, that you're actually going to do it. Again, we think this property owner will comply or will settle. We just need some more time to work through some issues. but we don't think the next piece of legislation will be needed, in other words. And it's always been our practice to do both of these pieces of legislation by emergencies, because we want to deal with the property owner as long as we can before pulling the trigger, if that makes sense.
I agree with your understanding, Jim, and also it's a good tool to let the property owner know that we are serious when we actually have council say we intend to appropriate it if this is not worked out. So I agree with your interpretation.
Casey, any questions? Mike?
I'm good.
Hey, Jim. How much?
Yes, Casey.
How much property are we talking about here? Is it? It's not the
There's
whole.
not much involved with it. No, there's not much involved with any of them. The issue with this one is the property owner has a tenant in the building, and their agreement is causing some issues such that the negotiation is we may transfer from a warranty deed to an easement, and ODOT this morning said that an easement would be sufficient. It would still allow us to do things in the future, and so that's the sticking point. We were waiting on ODOT to agree that an easement would be sufficient, which they did this morning. And then now we're going to get back with the property owner to say, hey, what you're asking is possible, and let's get this done.
Right.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me too.
I'm good.
So we'll probably have some emergency legislation at the next meeting to start the process on Kemper Road. Again, we're trying to still work with the property owners on Kemper, but we'll probably have to start the process at the next council meeting with the emergency, and then follow that up again with the emergency at the next meeting. So this is the one on Sharon Road, not Kemper. Any questions? All righty.
Hey, we've done the tax budget, so now we're down to Dora.
Yeah, Dora, this is just we're having a public hearing at the council meeting about the Dora. Mark forwarded me, let me get to the Dora here, what Wyoming did in terms of their legislation. I used that as a model to come up with ours. Mark, I pretty much only I put in our information based on what Kevin sent to council in the application. So I put in our stuff, and then I changed some things in section 5 and 6 that you may want to just review and make sure you're comfortable with. I added some things on why it's an emergency that Wyoming didn't have, that type of thing. And then I also added something in section 5 here, nothing of significance though. So yeah, it's just a public hearing, then the legislation that's needed to adopt the DORA.
I'm a great believer, and we're doing something out of the ordinary, and this DORA is something totally new. I'm a great believer in the old phrase that plagiarism is the greatest form of complimenting someone. So I looked around and I saw a number of other communities that had done something similar, and that's why I passed that on to Jim, saying, does this look like we could adopt it to our own? And that's what we've done here. So that's what Jim's talking about there. Because Dora is isn't it some kind of creature? Dora the Explorer or something, some kid's cartoon. So that's the only thing I knew about Dora until this.
We did send out an email to Katie Huffman sent out an email to the downtown group about this. We didn't get really much of a response. Lou Goose had some questions about it that I answered. So I'm assuming people are supportive of it, but I'm not sure if people will be there, next week, for or against. But we're also going to put it on Facebook, just so the public is aware as well.
Hey, Jim, regarding that layout for the DORA, this was a question I was wondering about. Is LaRosa's restaurant is part of that, correct or incorrect?
Yes, yes, they are. They're the furthest thing. I should have done the color version of this map instead of the black and white, but they're the furthest thing on the right, as you go out of town.
Okay, the only,
So
well, number one, do they have a liquor license permit for off-premise sales is one, and number two, walking down from 42 to Reading Road, going across to where the downtown loop starts. To me, if you have a highly intoxicated person traveling along that route, I'm looking at a safety concern for a pedestrian.
I was told, and I'm looking here, LaRosa's does have the appropriate liquor license, and they're one of the 6 that do.
Okay.
I have not reached out. I have not reached out to Eddie Miners about this, but I'm based on every other city that I've talked to, all the establishments like it. So I assume that he would want to be part of the DORA. I don't
Okay.
think we should exclude him for any reason.
Like I said, I was just looking at it as a pedestrian safety concern, with that being a pretty heavily trafficked area. And depending on the time, is this DORA just on a weekend from, like, say, 1 to 9, 1 to 10? Is there a time frame on?
Yeah, the hours are in the legislation right here. Monday through Thursday from 5 to 11. We talked with law committee about whether that was whether it should be earlier, but for school purposes, we
Right.
thought 5 to 11 was sufficient. Then Friday from 5 to midnight, Saturday from noon to midnight, and then Sunday from noon to 9 is what we have currently.
Okay. Like I said, that was
And
my
then
only,
special events.
that was my only concern with LaRosa's being so far away and the traffic concerns, because there's really no sidewalk there to walk on from LaRosa's until you get close to in front of the firehouse. Then you pick up a sidewalk. I believe.
I've been in some other cities. I've been in some other cities that have the DORAs in place that are pretty heavily traveled as well. So I don't think that's an issue, but obviously you guys can disagree with that.
Well, I'm not a voting member. It's just something I was thinking about whenever this first came out. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
I guess my take on it is that just because people can walk from LaRosa's to the Blue Goose with a beer doesn't mean they're going to. I mean,
That's a good question.
I think
Stagger.
right. On the one hand, you've got laws that aren't always followed, having to do with serving patrons. So, over serving somebody itself shouldn't have over trying to walk down Reading Lebanon Road. And I just saying, Rob, nobody wants drunk people falling down the street trying to all the way through downtown Sharonville, but I just
You're breaking up real bad, Casey.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
The fact that they can walk outside with a single cup of beer isn't going to change the fact that they aren't walking down the street now, is the way I take it. And I'd rather include LaRosa's and have them feel, part of the community kind of thing doing than exclude them.
I could reach out to Eddie if the committee wants me to, just to make sure he wants to be a part of it. I can't see why he would want otherwise.
If he doesn't want to be a part of it, then he just doesn't use the cups. And
Right.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
that's a good point.
I mean, he's
And
not a
somebody, if he ever sells, yeah, that's a good point.
Good point.
Jim, is the VFW part of this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm hoping we added them. Let me make
Couldn't
sure.
remember either, and I don't, yeah.
Even though that's a private club, private membership.
Yeah, the
They're on there.
VFW is included.
Yeah, it's
They-
in there.
Yeah, they only look at what type of liquor license they have, Rob. I don't think they look at, private versus public, that type of thing. And if the liquor board sees any reason for why any of these should be excluded, they'll let us know. That's what they did in Mason. Mason tried to, I think Mason tried to include a convenience store in theirs, and the liquor board came back and said, no, we're not going to allow a convenience store because they have a certain type of liquor license that's not allowed. And then Mason forgot one, so they had to amend it after all. But so the liquor board's going to come back and say, hey, VFW is okay or is not okay.
And is Al's Bar still open, or is that?
I thought it
We've
closed.
reached out to them. We've reached out to them, and we were told that they still have plans to reopen. We reached out to all the Chinese Imperial Inn. We reached out to Ales, and we were told that they still have plans to reopen.
Are there any other comments and discussion items?
No, sir.
If not, then I would welcome a motion for adjournment.
One question, if anybody
Okay.
knows, I'm sorry. Am I?
Go ahead.
I just saw where I believe it was United Dairy Farmers purchased the Halk House. Do we know any idea how they intend to use that, or do we know?
Is John still on here? No, just all we know right now, Mike, is what I sent out to council 2 or 3 weeks ago, that they purchased it. They're looking at using a portion of it for additional parking. Their intent, at least when they were talking to John, was to keep the mansion in place, and not sure what their intent of that will in the long run will be. And then obviously their site plan and all that will have to come to Planning Commission.
Yeah, that would be a great place.
So at least as of a couple,
offices. No.
Yeah, that
at
would be
least
good.
as of a couple of weeks ago, that's what they told John, that their intent was not to tear down the mansion like that. So
I would just wondered.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Now, could we now have the motion, or are you still, Mark, you still want another
Motion.
question?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks, folks.